Every empire begins with a whisper and ends with an echo. Every king rises to his throne believing he deserves it, and every fall begins the same way, with a single lie: I am more than others. That lie is the seed of ego, and it grows faster than fire. The ego doesn't need proof. It doesn't need reason. It only needs attention. A compliment here, a victory there, a moment where the world looks at you, and you start to believe it always should. The Stoics warned of this illusion, the moment when confidence turns to arrogance and mastery becomes obsession. You start to measure your worth by how loud others cheer and forget the truth. That applause fades faster than wisdom lasts. The ego is clever. It hides inside success. It disguises itself as self-belief, as passion, as purpose. But it's not purpose. It's poison. The Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, all faced this enemy within. Marcus ruled the most powerful empire in the world. But every night he reminded himself, you could die tomorrow. You could lose everything. Remember, you are just a man. Epictetus had no throne, no riches. But he warned those who did. The greater the power, the more dangerous the pride. Because the ego whispers to both slave and emperor alike. It doesn't care who you are. It only cares that you forget what you are. Fragile, fleeting, human. That's the tragedy of ego. It convinces you that you are rising, when in truth you are sinking beneath your own reflection. It feeds on illusion. It dies in truth. The Stoics called ego the silent destroyer, because it never screams. It whispers. It doesn't fight you. It becomes you. It sits inside every thought that says, I deserve this. I'm better than them. I can't be wrong. And yet, there is hope. Because the first step to killing the ego is to see it, to notice how it hides behind your pride, to feel how it burns when someone corrects you, to watch how it hungers for praise and starves when ignored. When you can see it, you are no longer owned by it. The rise of the ego is not the rise of power. It's the beginning of decay. Every man who worships himself will one day bow to his mistakes. That is the law the Stoics lived by, and the warning most men never hear until it's too late. Remember this: ego doesn't announce its arrival. It creeps in, disguised as confidence, and by the time you realize it's taken over, you're already its prisoner. In the water, we no longer see a king, but a man, just a man, finally seeing himself. When the ego rises, the only weapon that can kill it is humility. But humility is not weakness. It is not bowing down or shrinking away. True humility is power, restrained, a sword kept sheathed until it is needed. The Stoics believed that every man must face his reflection, not to admire it, but to question it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If any man can convince me of my error, I shall change gladly, for I seek the truth, not to persist in self-deception." Think about that. The Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man alive, welcomed correction because he understood. The ego hates truth, but humility feeds on it. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself correctly. The ego inflates your worth. Humility measures it honestly. The ego shouts, "I know enough." Humility whispers, "I can still learn." The ego demands to be seen. Humility works in silence. The ego thrives on followers. Humility leads without needing them. That is why the world mistakes humility for weakness, because it cannot understand a man who does not need attention to prove his strength. Seneca once said, "No man can learn that which he thinks he already knows, and that is the curse of the proud. They stop growing. Their victories make them blind. Their fame becomes a cage. They forget that greatness without humility is nothing more than vanity in disguise." Every time the ego says, "You've made it," humility asks, "But are you still true?" Every time the ego says, "You are better," humility answers, "You are just fortunate." And every time the ego says, "You deserve this," humility says, "You could lose it all tomorrow." That's how the Stoics saw life. The mirror is truth, and the ego cannot destroy truth. It only destroys itself trying. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You are not the universe. You are part of it." That single thought stripped away the illusion of control, the arrogance of thinking the world revolved around him. When you see yourself clearly, you stop pretending to be invincible. You stop chasing validation. You stop defending a version of yourself that never truly existed. Humility is not about lowering your worth. It's about lifting your truth. It's the art of standing tall, but without stepping on anyone. It's knowing you are capable, but not special, strong, but not superior, human, and nothing more. This is the war the Stoics spoke of, not fought with swords or shields, but with truth and illusion. The enemy isn't out there. It's the voice inside that says, "I deserve more." The whisper that says, "They should admire me." The poison that says, "I am above them." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. But before one can rule the mind, one must conquer the tyrant that sits upon its throne, the ego. The ego is clever. It wears the mask of confidence, but hides the chains of fear. It promises greatness, yet enslaves you to approval. It feeds on praise and dies in silence. And the more you feed it, the more it devours you. Epictetus warned, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." But ego reacts to everything. Insult, envy, failure. It screams, "How dare they?" It cannot endure being unseen. It cannot accept being wrong. You don't destroy the ego by fighting it. You destroy it by starving it. You silence it by refusing to obey. You humble it by seeing reality as it is, not as it flatters you to believe. Every insult becomes a test. Every failure becomes a teacher. Every wound becomes a reminder that you are still human. That is the victory the Stoics sought. Not dominance over others, but dominance over the self. To be unmoved by praise, untouched by insult. To stand in chaos and remain whole. The battle within never ends, but the one who masters silence within the storm has already won. The Stoics taught that after the death of ego comes the rebirth of peace. When you no longer crave to be more than others, you finally begin to be yourself. In silence there is clarity. In simplicity there is freedom. And in humility there is true power. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who ruled the known world, slept on a simple bed, ate plain bread, and wrote to himself every morning, "Remember you are a man, not a god." He had power that could have fed his ego endlessly. But instead, he practiced restraint, because he knew the higher he climbed, the more fragile pride became. The ego demands to be seen, but the wise man seeks to understand. The ego screams for control, but the wise man lets go. Epictetus, once a slave, said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Because he knew that reputation means nothing to truth. True greatness, he said, is invisible. It's the strength that asks for no recognition, the wisdom that does not need applause. Once you understand that the world cannot give you peace, only your mind can, you stop chasing and start living. The Stoics didn't reject ambition, they mastered it. They redirected it inward, from conquering nations to conquering the self. To destroy the ego is not to destroy yourself. It is to meet yourself for the first time. It's when you stop asking, "How do they see me?" and start asking, "What am I becoming?" That's when you become untouchable. Not because the world stops testing you, but because you stop reacting to it. You see praise and insult as the same, fleeting echoes in the wind. You see power and poverty as the same, temporary illusions. You see life and death not as opposites, but as the same eternal rhythm. The Stoic path isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming free. When ego dies, the soul awakens, and in that awakening, you will find the one truth every Stoic lived by: that nothing external can define you. You are what you choose to be, calm, grounded, and unshakable. This is how you kill the ego, not with hate, but with humility. And in that silence, you rise reborn, untouchable. The greatest victory is not over others, but over yourself. When pride fades and humility takes its place, peace begins. The Stoics didn't seek followers, fame, or applause. They sought mastery, the kind that cannot be taken away. So when the world provokes you, stay silent. When your ego screams for validation, smile. When life humbles you, bow and rise stronger. That is the path of the Stoic, the path that turns chaos into calm and men into legends. If this message stirred something inside you, subscribe for more Stoic wisdom. Like this video if it made you think deeper. Share it with someone fighting their own ego. And tell me in the comments, what battles are you facing within?